I'm gonna have to break this into parts because I only have 7 minutes or so, and it will overrun and then cut me off. After 7 minutes, it will overrun at probably 8 and cut me off, maybe 9 if I'm lucky. If I go too far and it cuts me off, I have difficulty. Sometimes it even will delete the footage completely if I talk about the government or any tough topics. uh, all of a sudden it gets corrupted, but that's only happened twice, and it's only when discussing the government. Anyways, in this video, I'm going to go over the psychological makeup of my father's new wife and why she's fed into this mental illness of when in doubt, blame Zach. That's my name, by the way, Zach. So, a little background information. I had my body and my health destroyed at age 7, and they continually destroyed my health and trafficked me all over the country to try to make sure that nobody would realize what my father's second wife was doing to me. My father's second wife died because of her messing with these pills with her child, me. I was a kid at the time, and she was taking these pills, messing around with them herself. Her liver failed because you can't do that, and my body failed. Her body failed, my body was failing and is still failing due to my mother's actions. She died from it. She even came home, and the last memory I have of my mother was trying to pour herself a martini while her liver fails at 20% of her liver only working. She was supposed to be in the emergency room, but they let her come home for one day to say goodbye and see her family, and she blew past her family to see her family in the liquor cabinet. Anyways, there's the background information you need to know. My body is failing. My father's second wife body failed. She passed away. My father remarried and then trashed me out. He took advantage of my Social Security. He took advantage of my inheritance and made sure I wasn't going to receive anything. And then he allowed illegal drugs and a new person and a new wife to control my life. Then he sold the house I'm living in. And now I'm facing homelessness after giving up my apartment so that he could get out of trouble. Yes, I had to give up my living quarters to keep my father from getting in trouble with Social Security because he took funds from Social Security when he wasn't supposed to and used it for his house when it was supposed to go for my housing. My housing let me stay there for free because they didn't know that I was on Social Security. When they found out, they were getting ready to throw me out, except for the DMH worker said my father had to pay me all that money back, what was about $12,000, and then the program was going to work some type of deal with me because the program said they didn't know what was going to happen now because my father lied. I bailed my father out, said to him that I didn't want the $12,000, I just wanted a father, and made a deal with him that as long as he acted like a father and kept my Social Security going, then we'll keep going. I made that deal with him. He bailed out on his part of the deal, threw me out to the street, never ever worked on Social Security with me, never ever completed the lawyer stuff, and I got thrown out of my housing. Now he's remarrying, selling the house I'm living in, and on top of that, I had to watch my mother die. I got no closure, didn't get to visit her, and I'm getting calls from attorneys telling me that I should talk to my father about my inheritance because my father's trying to weasel his way in onto my inheritance and make sure that I can't get it by not allowing me to show up, trying to keep me from collecting so there's more money for him. So I asked my father what's going on with this money that my mother obviously left, and it's to any of her siblings because it comes from Social Security. This is her retirement money. She was age 65 and never collected her retirement, and I am entitled to it. Her other son's entitled to it, and you're entitled to it. The other son didn't even want to go to the funeral. He literally wanted nothing to do with her. I gave my life to her. I gave my health to her. I wanted to visit. I was there as she died. I was there when she was drinking herself to death. I was there when she was smacking me around. I was there for her all the times when she needed me to the day she died. When she needed an outlet to beat, when she needed somebody to make up stories about, when she wanted to feel better about herself, when she wanted somebody to blame for her own actions, I was there. Why is this lawyer calling me? He says he knows nothing about it, lies through his teeth to me, and then that's it. That's it. He just goes and collects it himself. So this is the background you need to know. Now he remarries. He remarries after all that. He gets a third wife. Now, what do you think she thinks of me? Now, he remarries my mother's best friend. So we got to see this woman on vacations maybe once every 4 years. I got to see this Al, we'll call her. We'll call this woman Al. And this Al, how did she get to know me? Well, one time I was on a beach, it got cold, and I couldn't get up, but they all left me there, and my mother had to go back to get me. That's not much about my neurological disorder, and there isn't much there. But also, my mother loved to tell everybody that I had made up mental illnesses, that I'm crazy. Like one time I cut my bangs, and that became a whole thing. And my mother also would come up with all these illnesses to tell them I had. I'm a liar, I'm a thief, I'm schizophrenic, I'm bipolar, I'm depressed, I'm everything in the book she could come up with. So, of course, this woman never spent any real time. She wasn't there in New Mexico. She wasn't there during my childhood. She wasn't there during my teenagers. She knows nothing about the programs. She knows nothing about me being a teacher's aide. She knows nothing about my special schooling. She knows nothing about me missing 4 years of education. She knows nothing about the overdose. She wasn't there at the doctor's. She wasn't there when my father was acting neglectful. She wasn't there when my mother was acting painfully hurtful with medication. She wasn't there when my mother was acting crazy on Christmas about to stomp me into the ground in front of the whole family. She wasn't there when my mother said it was okay to give a child extra medication as a punishment in front of the other family members. She wasn't there when my mother was bragging about giving me extra medication as a punishment. She wasn't there when my mother was at the doctor's and I was talking about this neurological disorder at age 7, 8, 9, and on, and she was making up stories and trying to dodge the question. She wasn't there the night when I OD'd and my mother refused to bring me to the emergency room. She wasn't there in Texas when I was reevaluated and going to normal schools and things went better. She wasn't there when I got sent to New Mexico knowing there was only 18 hours I was seen by my parents in an 18-year period. Don't forget that. For 4 years in Massachusetts or longer, I'm only seeing them 8 days a month, and in New Mexico for 18 months, I'm only seeing them 1 hour a month. And these are the people that are supposed to know me, that are making up stories about me and talking to my doctors. Remember that my mother had control of my health care until the day she died at age 19. Every part of my health care was based upon what my mother told me or what my mother wanted for me and what she said was wrong with me. I would need these medications for life. I had all these mental illnesses, blah, blah, blah. All these different lies that were based upon no actual facts. Like they were based upon me winning a swimming medal. That's an accomplishment. That's a good thing. But instead, she twisted it into attachment disorder, and then I'm stealing. And this started at age 5, 6, and 7. Didn't start with me actually stealing. It started with my mother calling me a thief for about 5 years, and then me getting blamed for stuff I'm not doing. That's how this started. By the time I'm age 14, there's nothing I can do. My mother is continuously calling me a thief. She's continuously acting crazy in front of friends. She's driving up and down driveways, like literally screaming out the window, driving up and down the streets because her friend, because my mother gave me permission to go visit a friend and she wants to make up another mental illness that I ran away. She wants some drama So what happened? A kid came up to my driveway, asked me to visit. I told him he has to wait in the driveway. I came in the house, went in the computer room, told my mother what was going on, asked her if I could go see my friend. She said, yes, sure. So I went. I then left the computer room, went with him, and then my mother acted crazy again. Then she told every single doctor that I was running away. Oh, great. Then I do a science experiment one time with a slug. Now, what was the real problem? I'm playing with matches. No, I shouldn't have been doing that. But what did my mother make it up to be? I'm killing animals. I'm torturing animals. I'm a serial killer. My mother tries to make it out. Yes, my mother had me put in a mental institution for 30 days, telling the doctors that I must be some serial killer because I lit a match to see if a slug was fireproof. I thought the slug was fireproof, but I'm pretty sure the slime is fireproof. And my mother turned that into I'm a serial killer who likes to torture animals. Meanwhile, I love animals. In New Mexico, we used to wander, and while other kids wanted to squish them, I wanted to let them go. I was always for animals. Still to this day, I rescue lost animals in the woods. I don't run them over with my car. No, I bring them to the vet and I get them healed and make them healthy. Still to this day, there are certain bugs that I won't squish because they're good bugs. Good bugs I don't squish. But if I think it's fireproof and I could save humanity by making a fireproof fire extinguisher that's made at a slug farm, then that might be a cool idea. And it doesn't hurt the slugs one bit because it's fireproof. But yet my mother turned that into a bunch of other bullshit. And she had me held down and had me double dosed. I'm not kidding, while in the care of Lowell Treatment Center for this literal playing with matches. That's all I did. I was held down and given in the same hour a double dose of medications like Thorazine, Haldol, Vistarol, Xanax, Lamictal, Risperidone, a double dose of these type of meds because my roommate was talking about drugs and I made fun of him for it and he was mad at me for it. So he went out of the room and went to talk to staff, and then a staff member came back in the room and asked me if I took my medication, which I told the staff member yes. Then they said, well, we don't know about that, and called somebody over to slam me to the ground and force pills into me. Why does a child who's only 12 years old, 13 years old, being slammed to the ground, given double doses of medication? Because my mother's completely nuts. I'm doing normal stuff like playing with matches. I need a spanking. I need to be sent to my room. But instead, I'm given massive amounts of drugs. I'm given spins. I'm given a bunch of stories. I'm being fucked up in the head. And I'm given Thorazine, Seroquel, Lamictal, all because I'm a normal kid. Okay, so what does his new wife think about all this? When I tell her that this happened to me and I'm really, really upset about it and I can't get medical care, what do you think my father says? Or let's just talk about her. Well, she thinks this is an attack on my father's money and her happiness. That's how fucked up her psyche is. When I ask for help because all this happened to me because of my father's second wife, his third wife goes, oh my God, my cruises are over. Oh my God, you're trying to take away my cruises and my gold jewelry and my expensive dinners and my vacations to the beach and my airplane rides to California and where we get to take a cruise and my Florida cruise where we get to go to the Bahamas. You're taking that away from me. You're taking that away from me. I thought that the rest of my life I was going to be able to party until this man died. You're telling me that there was unfinished business? I thought we threw you out and that was the end of you, Zach. You're attacking our happiness. You're attacking our money. This is her psyche. This is where her mind goes. She starts getting mad. She starts going nuts because she realizes if my father and my mother did something wrong like this, then my father has to do some work and we gotta get some of this fixed. You cannot just let all of us die and be the end of it. That's not how this works. I'm not going to suffer for your sins. I did not sign up to die and be poisoned. That is not the deal here. It's not legal. It's not the United States. If you want to play illegal business, I can chop people up into people too. I can poison people too, but I'm a good Catholic that believes in following Jesus and takes responsibility for his actions. That's why I'm sober today, because I'm taking responsibility and I want to be sober. But that comes with consequences like more seizures. If I want to treat myself, I need medical treatment. And these doctors need to know what was going on in my childhood and what the diagnosis is, but they don't believe a word out of my mouth. Of course they're not, because they got 15 years of paperwork saying don't believe a word out of his mouth from my mother and father. So my father's going to have to be the one that corroborates, hey, yeah, Zach was going through some serious shit with my second wife. My second wife really was going nuts. She really did have a lot of pills. She really was giving a lot of pills. Zach really did mention some type of sight issue and some type of loss of senses. Yes, she did say this, or I'm going to need some backup here, because my mother and father spent 15 years making sure that doctors would never listen to me, saying that I make up fantasies, that I'm mentally ill, that I lie all the time. So when I bring this up to the doctors, you think they're going to establish a diagnosis based upon what I say? They won't even help me with a broken leg thanks to my mother and father saying those things about me. So of course, his new wife decides to call it a fantasy, decides to call it made up, decides to say that this is an attack on her money and her happiness, and then starts to verbally attack me and literally make things worse. And why would somebody verbally attack me after I'm sharing such deep, disturbing stuff? I'm saying, this Patricia crippled me. It was all visible. People were talking about it. Teachers were talking about it. I was supposed to go to physical therapy. I had to do speech therapy. My mother and father put me in ballet for this coordination issue. It's visible through life. I was able to play tennis barefoot with feeling little to no pain. Nobody else could play that long barefoot, but it's because of some of these problems. I've fallen, I've shaken. We've had records of this. We've known something's wrong with me. I'm skinny, I'm weak, as well as the eating disorder clearly makes sense now. I mean, come on. I was given a double dose of medication in the orphanage. Then I'm given an overdose by my adopted mother. Then she gives me a full bottle of Ipecac as a punishment. All these are related with something going in my mouth, with somebody giving me food or around food, or to do with something going in me. So of course I'm going to have problems with putting stuff in me after people give me stuff that makes me sick. Somebody gives me something to put in my mouth and I have an overdose. Somebody at breakfast, I'm eating eggs, puts ketchup in my orange juice, and they're holding me down, forcing stuff in my mouth. Then, on top of that, I take a bite of a mushroom, and they want to give me extra medicine to poison me and give me extra punishments from extra Ipecac and give me a full bottle of Ipecac as a punishment, making me violently ill. Not just vomiting like the normal Ipecac. No, my mother wanted extra. And how do I know this? Because she bragged about it and I saw it myself. That cup was empty, and then she filled it to the top with nothing but the bottle of Ipecac. Nothing. And then she bragged about this, that it was pure Ipecac, that this was extra medicine. She bragged about giving me extra medicine as a punishment. She said, I'm giving extra medicine to punish him. She said this in front of my nephew, my father, and me. She admitted this later multiple times. So, of course, as a child, 6 years old, 7 years old, who just went through those three things I mentioned, I'm going to have trouble eating food or be trusting any food or any pills that somebody gives me. But I'm being forced to. Then in New Mexico, I'm choked if I don't eat poisonous food. Literally, I get food poisoning, and I'm told if I don't eat the food, then I'm choked on the choking couch or thrown around like a rag doll until I'm black and blue. Literally, a lot of us did have bruises. Oh, it's a baseball. Oh, it's a whack. Oh, it's you strangling us with our own arms. But we're not going to go into that. So, when I bring this stuff up and say, hey, this is preventing me from using any shelters, preventing me from driving, preventing me from working, and thanks to my father's decisions through Social Security, I'm having trouble collecting Social Security, and I need an address, a phone, and internet to collect Social Security in today's age. Without those things, it's impossible. I've tried it before, and without a phone and an address, they don't work with you. You don't get the letter, and then you don't show up for court, and then they deny, and they drop your case. All because you didn't have a mailing address and you weren't given the letter. If you don't get that letter telling you when to show up, you don't get to show up. And if you don't, and I went down every week to the Social Security office, some of those people behind those desks will just yup you, tell you yes, and not even type on the computer. So you can't guarantee if you go in every week that you'll get a straight answer there. So when I bring this up to my father and them, telling them that I need them to help clean up some of their mess that's getting in the way of me living a normal life, they think it's an attack on them. So they start calling lawyers. They start telling the doctors to stop helping me. They start trying to do as much damage to kill me and finish me off as quick as possible. Instead of trying to help me, instead of trying to get me doctors, instead of trying to drive me to the doctors because they're only 15 minutes away, they decide to tell the doctors this is a fantasy and don't help me. They decide to try to cause harm. I literally can't drive, I can't walk, and they want to cut off all doctors as well. This is their response. Now, why would they do such a horrible thing like call my doctors and call this a fantasy? Why would they say such harmful things to my doctors? Why would they pretend like I have a mental illness when that doesn't help me one bit? Pretending or talking about mental illnesses to my primary care or to a neurologist would not help me fix this neurological disorder one bit. But why would they do it? Because my aunt, or I should say, my stepmother, who my father married after my mother passed away, who was my mother's best friend, feels like she might have to pay for her own life, her own paycheck she might have to pay. Maybe my father's money might have to go to helping his son. Maybe her daughter is not going to be able to suck the thing dry because my father's new wife and my father's new wife's daughter have allocated funds to their family over me for the last 10 years. It's probably added up to hundreds of thousands of dollars going to their granddaughter, would have nothing to do with the Newells, me, our family. Literally, we had problems 10 years ago, 11 years ago that needed to be handled. I was bringing them up at that time with my mother, my father, and my sister, and other people in the family, my brother, my nephew, my sister, my mother, and my father. We all were there. We all were part of this. I was taking the damage. I was taking all the pills. I was taking the rulers to the head. I was taking the shoes. I was taking the verbal abuse. I was taking the fucked up lessons. I was taking the brainwashing. I was taking the moving around. I was taking the lack of clothing. I was taking the lack of food. I was taking the wandering around in the woods, freezing to death, having seizures. I was taking the having seizures and don't get medical care. I was taking the falls and don't bring to the doctor. I was taking all of that. And now they want to blame me. They're going to fall in. When in doubt, blame Zach. When in doubt, blame Zach. When in doubt, blame Zach. There's nothing here to blame me for. There's nothing here. I've done nothing. The only thing they can try to do is make up that has something to do with drugs. But this goes back way before drugs, and I'm not on drugs now. This has nothing to do with drugs now because there are no drugs now, and it had nothing to do during childhood because the only drugs from age 5 all the way to about 16 were the ones my mother's was giving me. Then at 16, it's only cough medicine and marijuana all the way to age 20. Then at age 20, you bring in alcohol. Then at age about 22, you bring in the real opiates till about 24, 25. I think I had a relapse once, but that's all since 25 is one relapse. And that was during surgery. Yeah, that was when I needed surgery and they needed me to keep working. I needed surgery, but they also needed me to walk miles on the side of the road in the cold while needing surgery, while having seizures and falling down. So it's a little bit of a impossible task. So I had to ask for help through a surgeon, but he needed $4,800. To get that money, I need to keep the job. But to keep the job, I need the pain to go away. But to get the pain to go away, I need the surgeon. But to keep the job, I need the surgery. But to get the money, I need the job. But to get the money, I need the job. But to keep the job, I need the surgery. But to get the surgery, I need the money. But to get the money, I need the job. And you can see how this didn't work. I ended up just having seizure, ending up in the emergency room, and then being out of work, and then being in the emergency room, then being out of work, and it wasn't working. So a customer came in seeing me on the ground shaking, well, in the chair shaking, and he left something in the bathroom for me, some opiate pills or some fentanyl, what I made into a pill or sniffed or whatever, and I was able to keep up for a while, and that was my relapse right there. I relapsed, but it kept the pain away long enough for me to get surgery. But this should have never happened. See, if my neurological disorder was being treated, then none of that would have to happen. The problem I was having is I'm forcing myself to go to work right after seizures with a neurological disorder that's not being treated, and I'm not collecting Social Security. If I was collecting my Social Security, I would have just what? Taking care of everything. I wouldn't have had to go out in those storms. I wouldn't have had to worry about having seizures on the side of the road. I wouldn't have had to worry about that. The only reason why that situation occurred was because somebody has stolen my Social Security, somebody has fucked up my Social Security, somebody spent time lying on my medical records, and I'm not receiving medical care for a disability, and somebody's covered up my disability so they wouldn't get caught for it. That's the reason why that's happening. So, what again is the problem here? Why would they blame me for something they're doing? Well, once again, she doesn't know about the situation. My father's new wife, she just came in thinking she won the lottery. She lost her husband. My father lost his wife. Well, I knew the whole situation better than anybody. I was there. I was there. I watched her. I know what she was doing before she died. I know all the years prior. I saw what she was doing. I know what made her liver fail. So I know best what was going on in the home, because when she came home for that one day, how many people saw her? She went in the emergency room with her liver failing. She was in there for a couple months. She came home for less than 24 hours. Then she was back in the emergency room. Then she was in an ambulance. Then she died. Who saw her for that one day? I saw her. My father saw her. That's it. I saw what she did. She drank that one day. I know that situation. Anyway, she died. My mother's best friend's husband died. They're both at each other's funerals. They both start dating right after the get go. Literally, my mother's just got in the ground. I'm still crying about it, and they're dating. They get married right off the get go. She knows nothing about me. She knows nothing about my illnesses, but she's going to go along with all this mental illness bullshit. She's just going to go along with it or treat me normal. Well, half the family thinks I'm normal, half the family thinks I'm mentally ill or disabled in some way that nobody's telling the truth about. So nobody knows heads or tails about me. So she's just going to go along with whatever the hell's going on because she just won the lottery. She knows that the sale of this house, plus all the money my father has, plus my father saved money by using my Social Security, and he gets the full inheritance because don't forget, he Jewed me out of my inheritance so he could collect more. So, with all that, they're set. She won the lottery. Me, I'm broke. I can't work, I can't collect my Social Security, and the father's selling the house I'm living in. And my father screwed up the housing I had planned. So because he stole Social Security and lied about it, the same reason why I'm not collecting Social Security today. That, and I continue to not having a mailing address or phone line. So I have no way to really make money. I'm also disabled. I can't drive because I can't keep my legs still. I'm afraid some animal or somebody will get hurt. I mean, come on, I'm can't even keep my arms straight. I'll zigzag and my legs won't keep straight and my legs jerk and my body jerks. You can't drive like that. I also have seizures that aren't being documented. But yet I'm 19, I don't have a car, I'm still not driving. I've had a learner's permit for 2 years, but it expired. That's what I made my fake ID out of because, hey, I can't use it for anything. Nobody wants to show me how to drive. They're all too afraid because they know something's wrong, but they all don't know quite what it is, so they want to put the danger on to somebody else instead of getting me medical treatment and then letting me drive. Nobody wants to look into why I'm bumping into stuff. I mean, my mother will yell at me. She'll call it a self. I mean, my mother called me into the living room with my father, screaming at me, asking me why I have so many scabs on my shins from bumping into stuff. And then when I tell my mother I'm bumping into stuff for the last couple of years, it happens all the time. I'm bumping into stuff all the time. My mother just loses her lid and calls it a mental illness, says it must be self harming. I must be scraping my knees on the stuff on purpose. Of course, so we get nowhere. We get absolutely nowhere. So, do you think there was a change with my father's new wife? Nope. She does the same thing. She does the same thing. She wants to spend my father's money, though, a different reason. She has no reason to do this other than she wants more money. She doesn't want to give up her happiness. She's afraid that I'm trying to tack her happiness or something. When really, I just want them to be happy in soul and financially happy. But I need to live, I need to stay alive. You can't be on a beach going to Hawaii and then doing a nice cruise someplace. Meanwhile, you've stolen all my money, destroyed my life, destroyed my Social Security, destroyed my health, and then threw me out to the woods at the age of 19 to survive in the woods. Now I've built myself an apartment that's moldy. I've taken care of the elderly. I've worked with the disabled children. This is what I do, and I've got sober off of all the drugs I was using to treat my neurological disorder while I was living in the woods because I was having so many seizures. I needed to use something so I could keep my body moving. But I've been sober for many, 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 many years now, and if I do go back to live in the woods, this time I'm going to let it kill me. But there's no reason why I should have to face this type of issue. Nobody else in America faces this because there are laws and regulations protecting it. You don't get to cripple your child like they did to me, but they trafficked me, another crime, to hide that crime. And I can't believe that Massachusetts, with all the reporting I did, has no, they don't care. They just allow the doctors to use me as a cash cow. And my father was lied to by my mother, and he's okay with this too. He's okay with me being a cash cow and him being a cash cow and my mother getting her kicks off of it and then dying from it, and then his new wife trying to run off into the sunset with him to spend all the money while I die in the woods freezing to death. Is that the plan? While I'm sober, a hard worker who wants to help other people in life, somebody who follows Jesus, I deserve to die because somebody else wants to follow evil demons? And then they think they're going to get into heaven too. They'll go to church on a Sunday, go on a cruise on a Wednesday, and then here I died from what they did to me on a Friday. And then they'll go back to church that Sunday and think that they're all forgiven. Meanwhile, they're being told right now that they can just pick up a phone and make a difference. They can literally just take responsibility for their actions, and that makes the whole difference of the world. They can stop calling people, putting up walls, and trying to cause more damage too. They could try to help instead of hurt. Like calling me would be a good start. That was the, for once I want to see them call me. For every single one of their sons, we have to call them. 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 Then they ignore our calls. Then they dodge our calls. Then they try to tell us the text. Then they tell me the text. Then they lose my call. Then they're too busy for the call. I did that for years with them, trying to tell them about how much I was hurting. I would be in the emergency room on hold with my own father. I'm literally bleeding in the emergency room, shaking, out in the waiting room, shaking. I'm literally got blood dripping down my face, and I'm on hold. Then I get a hold of Alice, and she says she's too busy to take the call. Call back later. Meanwhile, I'm in the emergency room. When I was in Lowell and I had a seizure, or when there was or when I tried to commit suicide, but it really wasn't suicide. I just had frostbite on my toes, and the nurses wanted me to talk to my parents because the situation was so fucked up. They never took a call from an emergency room. They didn't care to take my calls. They never wanted to concern themselves with actually figuring out the problem. Now, that's probably a good thing while I was homeless, because while I was homeless, there were so many outside forces that have to be explained. And if they don't want to listen, they're not going to understand. And with how they jump to conclusions, it could go very wrong. So it's better to think of the ages 5 to 20 and the ages from when I moved to New Hampshire, and that will give you a clear picture of what I'm talking about. Because Patricia was alive, and now they're not involved. But when you get other people involved who don't want to discuss their part in it, that could be problematic. Like one time I was on opiates, but I didn't actually OD. Another guy who wanted my opiates got mad and set me up to go to the hospital. But if you look at the paperwork, it probably just says overdose from opiates. That's all it would probably say. But the truth there was I did the opiates 3 hours prior. I was high. I didn't sleep for 3 days, and I was trying to rest on TD Bank. And one of my buddies, or not my buddy, one of another homeless people who was talking to my buddy, who actually was my buddy, wanted dope, and we both said no, we don't do that. We don't sell it, and we're not giving it. He got mad and said if we don't give him free dope, he's gonna, and he couldn't think of anything. Then he said he's gonna call an ambulance. And he laughed and said, well, yeah, I'll be Narcaned and sent there. We both still said no, and he really did it. But see, if you don't understand the first part of that, then you don't understand what really went on that day. That's the fucked up part. You got all these things when I was homeless. You also got police officers lighting homeless people on fire. The same police officers are the ones making out the reports. You think those reports are any good? Fuck no. The police officers' reports are bullshit. They're lighting homeless people on fire. They're twisting words. I mean, there was a police officer that had to be spoken to because he dragged me across the floor after a seizure. Now,